Hi everyone, welcome back for another video. This week I am going to do a bit of a sit down, kind of chatty, few tips thrown in there, video about dissertation, and I will do kind of a specific video on tips for writing a dissertation. If you want to see that, you can let me know. I have done some stories on my Instagram about that, so I was thinking that instead I could chat about the process of deciding what your dissertation is going to be on and some tips or some kind of suggestions for how you might go about thinking what you might want to write your dissertation on for your undergrad. And I figured I'd start by just briefly telling you how I decided what it was that I wanted to do my dissertation on. So I'm going to do that. So basically, if you don't know, my dissertation, very broadly speaking, it's a literature dissertation for one, and I am looking at queer Indigenous poetry. And how on earth did I come to decide that that was what I wanted to look at? Well, honestly, I spent the first 3 years of my degree, well, no, 2.5 years, wondering what on earth I was going to do it on, because if you follow my Instagram, you'll know I'm someone who is very interested in a lot of things, and I like having my fingers in a lot of pies and keeping myself busy, and I'm passionate about a lot of things. So my issue was less that I didn't know what to write on, but I had so many ideas. But on my year abroad, I did a module in my first semester called Indigenous Literatures of Turtle Island, and it just spoke to me. So I feel like you might be like me and just have a module or something and just sit and kind of know that that's what you want to focus on. You might not know the specific text or the specific theme, but you know, you might just know. So I know that like some of my course mates like just knew that they wanted to look at the civil rights movement, or just knew they wanted to focus on World War II, or just knew that they wanted to focus on colonial travel writing, or like whatever it is that they're writing on. And that was kind of the same with me on my year abroad. I did my Indigenous literature module, and I just kind of knew that I wanted to look at Indigenous literature for my dissertation. And there was a couple of texts that really made me realise that I specifically wanted to look at queer Indigenous writing. Queerness is something that I've always been interested in academia since probably second year specifically. And we read a book called Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead, who is a phenomenal writer and poet, a two-spirit Indigenous writer. And that book is amazing, and it's really just kind of, it contemplates many interesting ideas of, you know, navigating the world as a queer Indigenous person, to do with fetishization and sex and just, you know, like a lot of things. And so I really enjoyed that. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. And then for a different thing I had to do, like an independent study while I was on my year abroad, my advisor recommended a poetry collection to me that I just fell in love with by Billy Ray Belcourt. And I just knew that I wanted to do my dissertation on that. And then as time went on, I just kind of put two and two together that I would focus on that, that poetry collection, and consider the queerness within it and its presentation of queerness. And obviously since then, my dissertation has progressed a lot. There's a lot more to it than just that. But yeah, so for me, it was really just about going with my gut. And so this is my first tip for you guys. Go with your gut feeling. Like if there's something that your mind is leaning towards, explore that. You don't necessarily have to decide that that's definitely what you're going to do, but explore it for sure. Which then kind of brings me on to my second tip as well, which is, you know, over the summer before your final year, do some research ahead of time, because first of all, it's going to save you time in final year, but also because it will make you kind of aware of how certain you are that you could spend an entire year researching and working on a project around that text or around that theme that you're thinking you want to look at. So go with your gut and do some research ahead of time. My first two main tips. And I lost my train of thought, I'm not gonna lie, I forgot what I just said, but I'm just gonna carry on as if this matches up with whatever I just finished saying. But another big tip that I would say, which is something that kind of applies to me, but not so much, I would say choose something that you have studied in some capacity. And I think that it's a wrong assumption or a wrong suggestion for you to choose something that you know the most about necessarily, because like over my 4 years at uni, I've studied the Cold War and Vietnam War and the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, like all of these different things I've studied numerous amount of times. I could tell you a lot about them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to do the best writing about that, because I know for a fact if I'd have done my dissertation on the civil rights, something to do with the civil rights movement, I would have got bored so quickly and I wouldn't have done well, because I wouldn't have continued to have been interested in what I was researching and writing about. So I think sometimes it's more beneficial to just go with what you're interested in and study and like, you know, do that for your dissertation as opposed to picking the thing that you know the most about. But equally, I would still suggest doing something that you've studied, even if it was just for like a week, just so you have a bit of background information, because I think it's a really big leap to choose something that you've never studied as part of your degree. I mean, that's not to say that you shouldn't, this is just my kind of tips, my thoughts on it. The poetry collection that I am doing for my dissertation, I'd never studied in like the capacity of a module. Like when I studied it, it was for an independent study module. So I did it all myself anyway, which is kind of like dissertation. So I didn't study it in class, but I had looked at it in the past and I got feedback on my thoughts about it. And equally, the general theme, you know, Indigenous literature, I had studied that in one module. So, you know, in the scope of my whole degree, it was very small and it was on my year abroad, but it was still enough to kind of give me a good segue into writing my dissertation on it, I think. And, you know, I had some background knowledge. I didn't have to sit there Googling the historical context, because I knew about the social and historical context already because of the module and because of my independent learning. So yeah, I think that choose something you've studied, but equally, you know, still follow your gut. Don't choose something you know the most about. It doesn't necessarily mean you will be successful because you've picked the thing that you know the most about. And my kind of final tip about picking a dissertation topic is, you know, don't be afraid to email your lectures. Don't be afraid to get in contact with staff that you've not spoken to before. On the UAB website, there's a staff list and all the interests and all their qualifications and all the things they've written before is all listed there, so you can get a feel of who could possibly be your disadvisor, you know, and ask them some questions about what they think about your ideas. And equally speak to your personal tutor or, you know, people within your department that do know you, and ask their advice on what you're thinking. You know, don't just sit and think about your ideas alone. Make sure that you ask for advice if you need it, basically. And I think finally, a big thing to remember about your dissertation is you can change your mind up until fairly late, I think. I don't know for definite, but I feel like kind of like November, December time, you can still be changing your mind on what your diss is about. And also, because of the nature of a dissertation, even if you stick with the same text and the same theme, it develops so much, it naturally evolves, that you probably won't create the same dissertation that you originally thought you would anyway. So, you know, don't think that the first idea you have is what you've got to stick with. Explore it, sit with it, see how it's working for you, and you can always change your mind and try something different. I have kind of probably a unique experience in that the thing that I decided I wanted to do my dissertation on a year and a half ago and kind of started working on, I suppose, a year and a half ago on my year abroad is still what I'm doing. And the dissertation I've created is somewhat what I thought it would be like, but not everyone will be in that boat. I know many people who, you know, just kind of decided what they're doing their diss on in November, or like their ideas totally changed, they pick new texts. It's a very unique experience and it's a very personal one, really. So it's different for everyone. But I hope that those kind of tips were a bit insightful, getting you thinking about how to approach picking a dissertation. I really just think that you've got to go with your passion, and once you've done some research and had a chat, you'll kind of figure out how passionate you really are about it, and if you can sit down and see yourself spending a year researching, writing and editing a project on that. And yeah, that's everything I have to say on that for now. I will come back with another dissertation video, maybe on writing or something, but for now I hope you enjoyed this. Have a lovely day and I'll see you soon. Bye.